have got a brand new camera to check out from OM System. This is the OM-3, and it joins the OM-1 Mark II, the OM-5, and actually it shares a lot in common, especially with the OM-1 Mark II. A lot of that technology is brought into this camera. But I've got to say, this is such an enjoyable camera to shoot with. There's so much about the way it works and the kind of design decisions that OM System have made that make this just a lot of fun. I've got to be honest, just an enormous amount of fun to shoot with, and it makes it very, very easy as a tool to get the kind of shots that you want to get, whether that's photo or video. This is very much designed around the idea of getting things right in camera, as opposed to, and if I'm honest, I'm certainly guilty of this, shooting just in RAW and then kind of making it look the way you want it to look later in the edit. And actually, I think that there's a lot of value in that, both in terms of the camera as a tool, but also for you as a photographer, or of course a videographer as well. Getting it right in camera is such a big part of things that it actually can make your life just a lot easier. And this really allows you to especially visualize the shots kind of before you get back and put them on the computer. You can really get them how you want them to be, like I say, in camera. Now we're going to get into exactly what I mean by that and how the camera is able to kind of help you with that. But let's start off by talking about why this is very similar to the OM-1 Mark II. So you've got the TruePic X processor in the camera that makes it super snappy. You've got great image stabilization, 7.5 stops. So that's fantastic for handheld shooting. And I tested that out with both handheld video shooting, including with the new 100 to 400 lens, which of course on a Micro Four Thirds ends up being like a 200 to 800 mil, but not that heavy. A stacked BSI Live MOS quad pixel sensor, and some frankly amazing specs when it comes to autofocus and speed of shooting as well. So you've got 1053 autofocus points, and that's cross type all the way out to the edge, which is really interesting because it means that it just performs very, very well no matter which part of the image you're trying to position those focus points. And then you've got AI subject detection as well in the camera. It makes it fantastic really for whatever you want to shoot. If you do want to go shoot landscapes, cityscapes, street photography, I think the camera looks great and it feels great in the hand. It's nice and small, nice and lightweight. But if you want to do wildlife, if you want to do some fast moving stuff, some sports, something like that, actually, it works incredibly well. The autofocus is very, very quick and incredibly reliable. And just to touch on that speed of shooting as well, 120 frames a second if you're shooting with SAF, and 50 frames a second if you want to shoot with CAF, so continuous autofocus. And that is fast. So that AI subject detection is the same as in the OM-1 Mark II as well. So there's a lot of that tech brought over into this camera, and you can really feel it when you're shooting with it. But the camera itself looks beautiful, I think. Now, it's not a massive surprise. OM System do make some really nice looking cameras. This one absolutely, I think, has just such a character to the way that it looks, right? But with all of that great, very modern, very new technology inside that makes it work very well. Okay, so I obviously talked about how I think the camera is a great tool and it really kind of pushes you and allows you and helps you to get things right in camera as opposed to just back on the computer. Right, let's talk about exactly what I mean by that. There's loads of little touches which I think just make this so nice to shoot with. Let's start off by talking about the new dial on the top left, which is a photo video dial. Now, obviously this isn't a completely new thing to the industry, but it's great to see it on the OM-3 because it just makes it so easy to switch between photo and video. And it meant that while I was out shooting, I was just switching this dial. What I love about this is that you can have different settings for photo and then video, and the camera remembers that. Now, again, it's not like it's a completely new thing in the industry. It's just incredibly good quality of life thing because, I mean, generally speaking, the settings I might be using for my photos are probably different to my video settings. My shutter speed, realistically, is going to be probably a lot slower for my video shooting than it is for my photography. And it's really nice when a camera remembers the differences and I'm able to just immediately switch to video and I've got the settings, I can immediately start filming, switch back to photo, and I'm back where I was, start taking those shots, which it's just quality of life, right? But it's so good. On the back, we've got this new CP button, and you can actually use it as a little switch as well between number 1 and number 2. Now that stands for Computational Photography. And it essentially allows you to activate loads of different modes that we've seen in other OM system cameras as well. And these are modes that I think on paper sound like a gimmick, but actually when you start using them, they're incredible. I'll be honest, I cannot believe we don't see them more widely throughout the industry, because they are such a fun way to shoot, but also allow you to actually genuinely get some really interesting creative shots without having to have loads of additional gear. So there's loads of stuff to kind of take a look at. You've got the high resolution shot, right, which bumps things up, even handheld, to 50 megapixels or even higher if you want to use a tripod. But I've got to say, the image stabilization is easily good enough here that you can just use this handheld. I never felt the need to put this on a tripod. I was quite happy, high res shot, or using the live ND as well. So that's a different mode you have there, which essentially is like having an ND filter on the lens, right? Except you don't have to have one. It's incredibly useful to have that in camera. And again, I was shooting long exposure shots with the live ND filter in the camera turned on, and you can actually switch the intensity of the neutral density filter as well. All handheld. It's amazing. It's absolutely incredible that you can do that. It's so quick, it's so easy, but it meant all I was taking out with me was the camera and the lens. And with one of these new little prime lenses, which we should have a video on the channel for as well, this is just such a nice little system to be shooting with. So you've got that live ND system in there, you've got the graduated ND filter system in there as well, which you can control on the back of the screen. That is incredible. It just allows you to get these shots right in camera, which I think is so good. And because you're visualizing it in the moment, as opposed to later in the edit, for me at least, it felt like it was freeing me up to really get the shots that I wanted to get, and maybe take shots that I wouldn't necessarily have taken otherwise. Of course, you've got things like HDR, you've got focus stacking, that's all in camera as well. You've also got multiple exposure. There's loads of things to kind of pick from there if you want to take slightly more interesting, slightly more creative shots with different settings like that. I think that's fantastic. And then if you want a slightly more stylized shot, you've got this new dial on the front, which allows you to do things like add different colors to your shot, right? Really saturate different things, really give you almost a color grade as you're taking the shot, and visualize that on the back. You've got some nice mono stuff as well, black and white. There's so much to kind of choose from for how you want to take your shots. And things like the art settings and things like that allow you to almost simulate certain types of film. And that can give you some really interesting looks to your photos as well. To be able to get all that right and actually get that creative look and that stylized look in camera is so exciting and so much fun. It makes going out and taking photos, it just adds a little extra spice to it. And I love it. Other than that, we've got some great video specs in here as well. It's absolutely a hybrid camera, as most cameras are these days. You've got 4K, 60 frames a second, Full HD, 120 frames a second. You've got some new video modes like OM Cinema 1 and 2, which gives you the same highlights as OM Log 400, but with slightly different characteristics. Like for example, Cinema 2 has a little bit more blue in it, a little bit softer, just to give you different looks, different options for things. I mentioned it before, but I think the camera looks fantastic. It's a full metal body, it's under half a kilo, it's really, really light, but it's also really comfortable. There's something which I think is so clever, which I only kind of realized after 3 or 4 days of actually shooting with it, but there's this little kind of grip on the back, which just perfectly sits, I mean, obviously designed to be like this, but where my thumb is, and it is so comfortable, right? Because there's no grip on the front, but there's kind of this tiny little thumb grip on the back. I love it. I think it's so clever to have it positioned there, and the controls all just work really well. It's very ergonomic. It all feels really good. There's no joystick. And normally I like a joystick, right? But I didn't even notice for a few days until I was really kind of working out how I felt about the way the camera feels to use. And it kind of dawned on me, yeah, there is no joystick. I don't actually miss it on this camera. And I think because of the size of it, it makes perfect sense. You've got to compromise a little bit, right? To have a nice, small, lightweight camera. What I love is it's very easy to take out and about, right? It's IP53, so dust and splash resistant, which is great. Same battery as the OM-1, so if you wanted this as a second camera, you've got crossover there with the batteries. You're gonna get very similar looking stuff and a similar shooting experience. But this is just such an enjoyable camera. That's the main thing for me. OM system cameras just generally have really won me over with the actual experience of shooting, which I think is such an important thing, right? They're comfortable, they're fun to use, and you can get some great stuff. And because of course it's Micro Four Thirds, the whole system is just smaller and lighter, which Yeah, doesn't hurt, does it? In case you can't tell, I'm a massive fan. I think this is a really awesome camera, and you can check out the full spec, all the pricing, all the fun stuff, as well as the new lenses which have been released as well. So we've got two new prime lenses, the 25mm and the 17mm as well, and of course the new 100-400 lens as well. That's all over at parkercameras.com. I'll pop links down in the description so you can go and check them out for yourself. Of course, any questions, pop them down in the comments, because that's always exciting and interesting, just in case I might have missed something. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm quite excited, to be honest with you. So absolutely any questions, pop them down in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts as well. Is this kind of camera interesting to you? I would love to know what you think. There's new content coming all the time, so don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. I will see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.